This is a talk I wrote for the European school, which was, well, Tim will know this, he was involved with it. It was due to take place in Scotland at Newbattle, entitled The Mystery of Consciousness. And this will be very apparent even with my attempts to address this in the first half of the talk, or at least to address the mystery of consciousness in the light of the wisdom teachings. Who is we Gary Fee Dundee to reveal the mystery of human consciousness? Come on. But anyway, we reside within a dualistic creation, spirit, matter. And these do not exist and function as independent realities, but rather as the two aspects of the one reality, which theosophists refer to as para-Brahman or para-Brahm, whichever pronunciation one prefers to use. This is the field of absolute consciousness. In The Secret Doctrine, Madame Blavatsky informs us in the first of the three fundamental propositions of an omnipresent, eternal, boundless, and immutable principle on which all speculation is impossible, since it transcends the power of human conception and could only be dwarfed by any human expression or similitude. Here is an image of Adi Shankara, the 8th century exponent of Advaita Vedanta, which represents the apotheosis of Indian teachings. The term para-Brahman is derived from Advaita Vedanta. And he emphasized that para-Brahman is without form or qualities. He described this as nirguna Brahman, meaning without or beyond the gunas. The gunas being three fundamental forces whose interplay both gives rise to and sustains creation. All that can be known within creation, both tangible and intangible, is a manifestation of the gunas and their various interactions. So Nirguna Brahman, beyond the gunas, possesses no qualities. Although the Vedanta teachings describe this as possessing a threefold nature, Satchitananda, ultimate being, pure consciousness, and bliss. We're describing here the transcendent principle. What the Vedanta teachings refer to as Saguna Brahman or Ishvara means Brahman, the creator, the transcendent principle with the gunas. This is Brahman's dream of the world, or what is referred to as Maya, where this one life appears as many separate and distinct lives, and the affairs of the transient material world appear as real and enduring. Everything within creation consists of mere names and forms derived from the divine sound, the Om. As theosophists, we are aware that the sounding of the Om gives rise to the 7 rays. Blavatsky refers to these under various names, such as the Ahi, the primordial 7, the Dhyani Buddhis, or the 7 Logi, to name but a few. And these 7 rays underlie the entire functioning of our universe. 7 great streams of divine energy which interact at every conceivable frequency upon the various planes of creation, which they also construct and govern. The rays give rise to our planets, solar systems, galaxies, and beyond. It is their spiraling cyclic movement which draws all being into and out of manifestation, coloring it, saturating it with their own qualities and attributes. Initially, there emerges 3 major rays of aspect, the 3 at the top: will and power, love, wisdom, and active intelligence. These correspond with Shiva, Vishnu, and Brahma in the Indian teachings, the gods. The 4 remaining rays of attribute arise from the energies of the 3 major rays. The key to their meaning is in the word attribute, or in terms of their derivation, sorry. They arise from the major rays. And the three major rays are all related to the gunas. The third ray corresponds to rajas, activity, energy, force, movement, and passion. The second ray of love, wisdom, the ray which governs our solar system, corresponds to sattva guna, which is related to goodness, peacefulness, lightness, and happiness. And the first ray of will and power corresponds to tamas guna, which is related to inertia, darkness, sloth, and dissolution. And it's a natural interplay of these three fundamental forces that give rise to what we refer to as Maya, obscuring the one life. In simple terms, Maya derives through one perceiving forms as inert, being unable to see the life within, this relating to tamas guna. And the active energies of the rajas guna, then cause one to become engaged with these forms, involved, developing a passion for these forms and so on. And this gives rise to Maya. And the first aim of the aspirant, taught in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, for one treading to the path, is to increase the presence of the sattva guna, thereby promoting serenity, spiritual clarity, and to dispel rajas and tamas. However, our spiritual essence is completely beyond the gunas. So ultimately, when treading the path, one must transcend the gunas, thereby attaining liberation from the wheel of rebirth, or moksha in the East. In the Bhagavad-Gita, the righteous Pandava warrior Arjuna asks his charioteer Krishna, who is an incarnation of the god Vishnu, how can one recognize those who have become free from the gunas, O Lord? What is their behavior? And how does one become free from the gunas? And Krishna replies, O Pandava, the one who is not afraid of joy, activity, and errors, and yet does not long for them when they pass away, who is not shaken by manifestations of the gunas, and saying, gunas act, stays aloof, uninvolved, steady in situations of happiness and sorrow, self-confident, for whom a clod, a stone, and gold are all equal, immutable amidst the pleasant and unpleasant, amidst praise and blame, same in honor and dishonor, equal towards a friend and a foe, striving not for prosperity in the material world. Such one is free from the gunas. And I find this passage really beautiful and so incredibly potent, and almost like an affirmation. We could certainly write a book about that. So the mystery of consciousness, of course, cannot be expressed in words. It is beyond name and form, and its mystery has stymied many great minds since the dawn of speculation. Of course, the materialist view is that it emanates from matter, courtesy of neurons firing within the human brain. Quantum physics, however, informs us that 95% of our universe is comprised of dark matter, which it is yet to sufficiently elaborate upon. But to understand the mystery of consciousness, the awareness of the aspirant must be elevated to the transcendent level of being, which gives rise to consciousness itself. This is the realm of Sat, ultimate being, which we have seen in the Vedanta teachings. Blavatsky refers to this in the voice of the silence. When he has ceased to hear the many, he may discern the one, the inner sound which kills the outer. Then only, not till then, shall he forsake the region of Asat, the false, to come unto the realm of Sat, the true. As Theosophists, we are aware that spirit infuses, perhaps I should say impregnates matter, as part of a vast evolutionary design. In one of the hymns of the Rig Veda, the primeval giant Purusha, Purusha being the Sanskrit word for spirit, is sacrificed, whereby everything within the universe is produced from his dismembered body, the Vedic gods, the atmosphere, heaven and earth, the various kingdoms of nature, and so on. And this is symbolically depicting the infusion of matter by spirit. The Indian teachings of Jainism, Samkhya, the yoga teachings all describe how Purusha infuses Prakriti, Prakriti being the Sanskrit word for matter. And it was the Vedanta teachings, well, Advaita Vedanta, which developed this further by stating that the divine life is both transcendent of, yet also immanent within all forms. I had to type out Madame Blavatsky's model of the cosmos. Quite incredibly, there is not a decently sized or decent piece of artwork online about this. Maybe Tim and Peter will go to work on this one. So I just simply typed them out. Theosophy states that creation arises from the cosmic plane of Mahat, the universal mind. This is the fifth one. This is contained by the Ahi, or the seven rays. The universal mind relates to the creator god Brahma in the Hindu Puranas, and also the Vedic storm god Indra. So the universal mind acts on the plane below, known as Fohat, which really represents the energies of, or is the energies of, cosmic ideation. In describing Fohat, HPB states that it is the alpha and the omega of universal creative force, evolving from pure spirit and ending in gross matter. It is also the key to the cycle of science, divine and human. And he who comprehends its full meaning is forever liberated from the toils of Mahamaya, the great illusion and deceiver. In the Theosophy logo on the left, within the Uraborus, we see a swastika, which is representative of a symbol of the energies of Fohat. I will discuss the symbolism of our logo a bit later. In the image to the right of the Hangman Tarot card, it's being from the Rider-Waite deck, this represents the spiritual aspirant seeking to attune to the energies of Fohat. This is indicated by the legs being in the shape of a pilgrim cross or swastika. The individual is upside down, symbolizing an overturning of one's consciousness from that of a transient, self-centered personality to one who can function as an effective instrument of the soul or higher self. The state of consciousness referred to as Samadhi is the eighth and final limb found in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. This is a state of non-dual consciousness where the finite mind is liberated from finite consciousness and identifies with the infinite. Blavatsky informs us that only the highest adept in this state can extend one's consciousness to this plane. However, she informs us that the seven cosmic planes, which you saw listed earlier, correspond to the seven states of human consciousness. Of course, as members of humanity, we are a microcosm reflecting in miniature the composition and processes of the macrocosm, this being in accord with the famous esoteric axiom found within the Emerald Tablet attributed to Hermes Trismegistus of as above, so below. So whilst we cannot perceive the higher cosmic planes, the correspondence between these and our own levels of consciousness enable us to experience their reflection on our own level. And HPB states, these seven planes correspond to the seven states of consciousness in man. It remains with him to attune the three higher states in himself to the three higher planes in cosmos. But before he can attempt to attune, he must awaken the three seats, Atma, Buddhi, Manas, to life and activity. Theosophical teachings inform us that in essence we are sparks of a great fiery flame, referred to as the solar logos. We are aspects of this great life, which is seeking evolution and growth in a similar manner to the way we are, except on a cosmic scale. And the solar logos evolves through the evolution of its component parts, us, the monads. We descend into matter to develop hitherto latent qualities. Here is an image of the 7 planes we are more familiar with, which represents what we call the cosmic physical plane, or Prakriti, just giving us an indication of the vastness of our universe. So as part of the evolutionary process, the monads must become immersed in the material world, doing so via instruments known as the soul and personality. This is achieved by the factor of desire. The Indian teachings describe this as the pravriti marga, or path of desire. We must bear in mind that the soul or higher self, as the instrument of the monad, is seeking to develop a complete form of consciousness where it is responsive to every vibration of life on every plane of existence. And to do this, the soul undergoes incarnation many times in the various races and cultures of our world. And the factor of desire here is very important. The soul, through its instrument, the personality, becomes immersed in matter. Just as a seed will seek to go deep into the soil so its stem can then extend upwards with solid roots and it can blossom in the direction of the sun. So we as souls in incarnation, seeking to fulfill the objective of the monad, become immersed in the circumstances of the material world through desire, which urges us to activate latent psychic energies, to develop faculties and to expand our consciousness. However, this comes at a cost. Desire creates attachments to objects, to circumstances, and to people within the world. And when treading the path, these serve as metaphorical chains which bind us to the material world. Of course, we have also created myriad karmic entanglements in this process. Of course, Plato described Maya in his famous cave analogy, depicting humanity as prisoners within a cave, transfixed by the observation of phantom apparitions upon a wall. And the soul getting involved in matter through the factor of desire is valid and effective up to a certain point, becoming immersed in the world of Maya. However, there comes a time when the soul reaches a saturation point. Its instrument, the personality, then experiences what we in theosophy refer to as divine unrest, where the affairs of the transient world out there no longer satisfy nor sustain one. This is when one is inexorably driven to embark upon the spiritual path, when the Nivriti Marga, or path of renunciation, beckons. This is when one journeys back to source. So desire, which has previously served a healthy purpose by enabling the monad via the soul to engage its mechanisms with the material world, must now be transmuted into aspiration for matters eternal, as one treads what we refer to as the spiritual path or path of return. And this is very challenging. As Blavatsky states, there is a road steep and thorny, beset with perils of every kind, but yet a road, and it leads to the very heart of the universe. The perils here, including the tests which the higher self will place in our way, so that we may demonstrate our worthiness as a recipient of its energies. the rapid dispensation of karma, also the orchestrations of what Theosophy refers to as the dweller on the threshold, the sum total of our personality attributes which have accumulated over our many lives, which speaks to us its dominion over the would-be initiate. So the path is challenging. In accord with the axiom as above below, if we were to consider the analogy of the plant, just at the stage of blossoming, tremendous stress is occurring at the bud. Cells are being ripped to shreds in order that the plant may blossom and point towards the direction of the sun, the symbol of the monad, the plant unfolding the soul as a lotus. And similarly, when we tread the path, this can be very stressful. And all of our energies should be focused upon opening the symbolic lotus petals of the soul, rather than being overly concerned with matters of a transient nature. I stated earlier, we reside within the solar system on the second ray of love wisdom. So when we express love wisely and wisdom lovingly, we are acting in accord with the purpose of our solar system. Here is an image of the great Bulgarian spiritual teacher, Peter Dunov, or pronounced Peter Dunov here in the West. He tended to use the term God to describe the divine. He also employed terms such as the primordial principle, or the ultimate reality, or the sun of life. And he stated that the divine is the innermost principle of love, wisdom, and truth, and it manifests as light in our minds, warmth in our hearts, and strength in our will. And he emphasized that the aim of life is perfecting love. And of course, given that we reside within a second-ray solar system, this is most resonant. However, he states that this comes at a price. The path to God is a path of suffering. In this way, you will come to know him. You will come to value what God gives you, as well as what he takes away from you. Suffering is the path to freedom. In The Voice of the Silence, Blavatsky describes the ladder by which the candidate ascends as being formed of rungs of suffering and pain. She also describes the earth as the hall of sorrow. My mentor, Douglas Baker, emphasized that the earth has a challenging karma related to the factor of pain, and that the esoteric meaning of Christ dying for the sins of humanity relates to the fact that he undertook a great share of the planetary karma. C.W. Leadbeater stated there were 63 billion human monads coming into and out of incarnation, or operating within what Theosophy calls Earth scheme. And Baker would emphasize that sharing the karma of the earth, it's not divided equally by 63 billion, but rather people on the path and advanced souls are expected to take on a greater share of the planetary karma. In esoteric astrology, karma is associated with Capricorn and its ruling planet Saturn. Perhaps it's no surprise that these also rule synthesis, integration, and initiation. Saturn's scythe, through karma, cuts away the dead wood in our lives, both within our psyche and in the outer world. And on this basis, we learn valuable lessons. Theosophy describes the spiritual path, or symbolizes it as a mountainous ascent even. And if we are going to ascend the symbolic cliff face, we are going to face great challenges. Like the mountain goat, symbol for Capricorn, there will be times when we will have to cling on to a narrow precipice whilst all around us is crumbling. However, this again serves a valuable educative process. And when we tread the path this way, going up this cliff face, We are compacting the lessons and experiences of many lives into a short few. We are fast tracking the process. And of course, this is very challenging, but the magnificent vistas which open up to us in the form of expansions in consciousness, elevations in our level of being, render the process worthwhile. So as monads, the wisdom teachings inform us we are here to develop spiritual staying power, the ability to radiate and express spiritual qualities in the material world, regardless of what is going on round about us. And of course, this is very challenging. We have incarnated within a culture which is overly materialistic, highly competitive, highly individualistic, and of course, the astral and mental planes are heavily polluted by this. However, this also represents a wonderful opportunity to us. If we can radiate and express spiritual qualities here in the West, then it represents a great victory. And when we tread the path, we must effectively deconstruct the existing personality and assemble it at a higher point of consciousness to allow soul infusion. Our attitudes, predispositions must be assessed. Our complexes, desires, and attachments must also be addressed if we are going to be a worthy recipient of spiritual energy. The medieval alchemists described this in their motto, Solve et Coagula. Solve relating to the breaking down of components, and coagula to their reconstitution in a more purified form. This enabled the alchemist to obtain the elusive philosopher's stone, symbol of the awakened higher self. And of course, this is very, very challenging. Returning to the Bhagavad-Gita, the battlefield of Purushatra with the two armies is a symbol of the effective battle between the higher and lower nature. The Pandavas, who are good and righteous, represent our higher spiritual nature, and the Kauravas, who are self-serving, represent our lower instinctual nature, which is desire-driven. And the protagonist, the Pandava Arjuna, is initially terrified at the prospect of having to confront the enemy. Amidst its ranks, there are teachers of his, friends and relatives. And this is symbolic of the fact that when we tread the path, there are aspects of our psyche and of our lives which we may hold dear, but still require removal or transmutation if we are to proceed further up the symbolic cliff face of the mountain. In the Bhagavad-Gita, Krishna offers Arjuna advice, enabling him to engage in the righteous and necessary conflict. And there is also the very famous quote, chapter 2, verses 47 and 48. You have the right to perform your prescribed duties, but you're not entitled to the fruits of your actions. Sounds like a bad deal, doesn't it? Never consider yourself to be the cause of the results of your activities, nor be attached to inaction. He then proceeds, be steadfast in the performance of your duty, O Arjuna, abandoning attachment to success and failure. Such equanimity is called yoga. These two verses are basically exhorting Arjuna and ourselves to function as an instrument of the soul. Be aware that that is the very reason for our existence. The word yoga possesses a Sanskrit root meaning to join, unite, or come into union or conjunction with. And when we practice yoga, we are coming into union with the soul or higher self. And there is an esoteric postulate that states that all things live or reside within the body of a greater being. And the souls of humanity constitute part of the consciousness of the great planetary life, which we are a part of, the planetary logos. And when we undertake spiritual disciplines, building what is called the Antakarana, or rainbow bridge between soul and personality, we are not only drawing closer to our own soul or higher self, but also to the consciousness of the planetary logos, whereby we may share in its energies and powers. In my opinion, this in essence is what initiation is, as described by Theosophy. We are drawing closer to the higher self and thereby to the planetary intent. The wisdom teachings talk of the third degree initiate, climbing the mountain of initiation and receiving a portion of the divine plan, which they then must implement in the world. This represents one becoming more attuned to the mind of the planetary logos and its intent. And of course, I mentioned as above, so below, just as we are seeking to effect this, to perform yoga, this self-same process is occurring with the planetary logos, the solar logos, and so on. So when treading the path, we seek to unfold the symbolic petals of the soul, which is represented as a lotus, although in actuality is formless. We say petals of knowledge, love, and sacrifice. The sacrifice petals being unfolded last as one performs acts of great sacrifice to benefit humanity in the evolutionary process. And we talk of doing this in a balanced way by studying the wisdom teachings and related work, importantly, meditation, and of course, service to humanity and to the planet. I'm going to look at a legend now, which is probably, in my opinion, one of the best, if not the best representation of treading the path as outlined by Theosophy. This is the Grail Quest, derived predominantly from Celtic myth, especially Welsh, and later infused by the teachings of mystical Christianity. Now, in the Grail legends, the sacred vessel is commonly held in the custody of the Fisher King or Maimed King, depending which version you read. And the king has been wounded in the thighs, which is a euphemism for the genitals, by a blow known as the Dolorous Stroke. And this renders the king impotent. He cannot engage in sovereign union with his land, so it becomes a wasteland bereft of water and vegetation. And the Fisher King or Maimed King is symbolic of the theosophical monad, which is effectively wounded and handicapped in terms of expressing its latent qualities when it is implanted into the realms of matter. And in the Grail legends, only the questing knight who displays the necessary purity, courage, honor, and virtue may attain the Grail by overcoming the many challenges which confront one upon the quest for the sacred vessel. So the Grail is within us. It is a symbol for the soul or higher self, a receptacle capable of receiving the energies of the monad, and what Theosophy refers to as the third initiation. And the successful Grail Knight in the quest then affects the healing of the Maimed King, being a symbolic illustration of the monad's acquisition of spiritual staying power, as the wasteland and its benighted landscape is redeemed. And when we embark upon the spiritual path, like the knights questing for the Grail, we enter the realms of the unconscious, undergoing many tests and trials in pursuit of initiation. And upon attaining this, soul and personality function as one. We effectively become the Grail, with our aura being infused by spiritual qualities. La Quest del San Graal, the quest for the Holy Grail, formed part of the Vulgate cycle, which was succeeded by the post-Vulgate cycle. series of prose volumes describing the life of Arthur and the Grail in great detail. These formed the basis for Malory's Le Morte d'Arthur. And it was a Vulgate work which created Galahad, the virgin knight who was destined to achieve the Grail. In these tales, well, the quest for the Grail, a stone with a sword embedded in it appears in the river near Camelot, and the sword contains an inscription: only the greatest knight can draw the sword from the stone. None of Arthur's established knights are able to do so, but Galahad, who had been knighted the day before, easily extracts a sword from the stone. He then proceeds to occupy the seat at the round table reserved for the knight who is going to succeed in the Grail Quest. This seat is referred to as the Siege Perilous, or perilous seat. So Galahad symbolizes everything required to succeed on the quest for initiation: purity, heroism, virtue, and honor. And it's only when we possess such qualities and when we are psychologically integrated that the higher self may use us effectively, whereby it extracts a sword of personality from the stone of material entrenchment and all that binds us to the wheel of rebirth, our attachments, desires, and so on. Galahad, sitting at the Siege Perilous, completes the fellowship of knights, a symbol of psychological integration, demonstrates his capacity to cope with the forces of the unconscious. We are informed that the Grail Knights are seated for supper and they obtain a partial vision of the Grail. This inspires, and this is what Theosophy would call the first initiation, when we wake up to why we are here. The knights then vow to go in quest of the Grail, leaving behind their noble and honorable lives. Because they are aware of something higher, they enter what is known as the forest of adventure. We could look at this as the inner realms of the psyche, and they all do so at their own chosen point. They don't follow on from where anyone else has gone before. And this is very important for us in two aspects. We each have our unique evolutionary history, what has occurred over our many lives previously, encoded within the various permanent atoms. And also, as an esoteric astrologer, we each have a specific soul's purpose of the soul. And whilst these are all unique, they still contribute to the development of the planetary consciousness, which we are a part of. In one of the many adventures within the forest of adventure, Galahad approaches the castle of Maidens. In the castle, the Maidens, who represent Christian virtues, are imprisoned and guarded by the 7 Knights of Darkness, who represent what Christianity would define as the 7 deadly sins. Galahad defeats the knights and redeems the world. He sets the Maidens free. A monk gives Galahad the key to the castle, so the 7 virtues of Christianity, prudence, temperance, justice, courage, faith, hope, and charity, are expressed. And when we tread the path, we must engage in a process of self-analysis with a view towards transmutation of lower aspects of our psyche. We see parallels with the 7 virtues in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, the yamas and niyamas, the universal observances and personal morality. I've maybe got those 2 the wrong way round, but this is an important aspect of treading the path. It sounds very bread and butter, but we can only be safely and successfully infused by the energies of the higher self when this occurs. As Blavatsky states, there is but one road to the path, and at its very end alone, the voice of the silence can be heard. The ladder which the candidate ascends is formed of suffering and pain, rungs of suffering and pain. These can only be silenced by the voice of virtue. In terms of the Arthurian legends, the round table is circular. It is a mandala shape, representative of psychological wholeness. The Sanskrit word mandala or mandala means circle, which is a symbol of wholeness and of unity. Here we see Galahad obtaining the Grail. Interestingly, after obtaining the Grail, just like the initiate, they have further work to do, taking the Grail to the kingdom of Saros. Galahad thereafter is asked to look deeply into the Grail. He perceives its deepest secret and expires, like the fifth initiation, liberation from the wheel of rebirth. Percival becomes a hermit because that is his path, whereas Bors returns to Camelot, rather like the initiate, informing the knights of the adventure. Here is an image of the Uraborus, a dragon or serpent devouring its tail, representing infinity, the cycle of death and rebirth, which leads to immortality. It is also a symbol of primordial unity and can therefore be related to the theosophical or Vedantic Parabrahman. Returning to the emblem of our society, it features the Uraborus encircling interlaced triangles, soul and personality in fusion, the upward pointing triangle being the soul, the downward the personality. There is no Antakarana because it ceased to exist when the two are fused. There is the Egyptian Ankh, a symbol of spirit or consciousness, triumphing over matter, the circle of spirit, the cross of matter. And as I said earlier, the Uraborus features a swastika representing the energies of Fohat, which arise through the sounding of the sacred word, the Om, which is featured on top with the circle. The serpent is related to the Indian Ananta Shesha, the cosmic serpent. When he coils, time exists and creation is manifest. And when he recoils, the universe goes into a state of pralaya. Of course, in terms of as above, so below, we could say this in terms of the various incarnations of the soul. Now, Ananta Shesha floats on the waters of space. He forms a bed for Vishnu. A lotus protrudes from his navel where the creator god Brahma emerges. The lotus itself is a symbol of the archetypal goddess who provides the means by which deity manifests. And this can be found in all levels of existence beneath the first cause. In the stanzas of Jeanne, it informs that Fohat contains the father, the mother, and the son, the transcendent principle, manifestation, and the son being the monad, the son of necessity, who goes through these many incarnations as a means of acquiring spiritual staying power. So it is within the realm of the goddess that we undertake our evolutionary journey. And when treading the path, ultimately we seek to penetrate her veil of Maya. And to do so, we must demonstrate worthiness and eventually attain the state of Nirguna Brahman, beyond the gunas. Of course, HPB's first work, Isis Unveiled, she referred to this symbolic veil as the veil of Isis. Indian traditions commonly symbolize the spiritual path as the crossing from the the shore of everyday life across the river to the shore of transcendence. The Buddhists talk of yanas or ferry boats, which represent vehicles which can take us there. The Jain saviors are called Tirthankaras, meaning crossing makers. And as the symbolism would imply, similarly to scaling the mountain, we cannot take excess baggage with us. This must all be dealt with in the process of solve et coagula, as described by the medieval alchemists. Now, in the West, we have developed many keys, yanas or ferry boats, which can assist us in effecting the symbolic river crossing. Kabbalah, alchemy, numerology, esoteric psychology, to name but a few. And these assist us in terms of treading the path. And for the keys to be valid, they must be relevant to contemporary life also. Now, HPB informs us of the mystery language of Senzar, which forms the basis of the stanzas of Zhan, the core of the secret doctrine. He describes Senzar as the secret sacerdotal tongue from the words of the divine beings who dictated it to the sons of light in Central Asia at the very beginning of the fifth hour race. For there was a time when its language was known to the initiates of every nation. In commenting upon Senzar, John Algeo states, the mystery language is what we now call symbolism. It speaks to our unconscious minds and can be only translated into ordinary logical language. He then outlines two principal types of archetypal symbols, those found in myths, fairy tales, allegories, parables, which have a hidden meaning, and also symbols which are a visual representation of the archetypal symbols in pictographs, the hieroglyphic and cipher-like characters, whose meaning the initiated can interpret independent of any language. Plato introduced the concept of archetypes. Adolf Bastian described these in his concept of elementary ideas, making the distinction between these and folk ideas, which were the attempts of various cultures and civilizations to understand and engage with the archetypes through their myths and legends. And Jung developed and advanced this concept. And when we consider the term archetype in its pure form as a divine idea, I'm taking this term from Jung, these relate to the intent of the great solar life which we are a part of. And when we tread the path, we seek to become aligned to the intent of the greater beings within which we exist, the planetary and solar logos. And in doing so, we seek to attune to the energies of the archetypes in their pure form. Jung stated that upon attaining individuation, one can consciously express the energies of the archetypes. This equates with theosophical third initiation. And archetypes precipitate into our conscious psyche through the symbolism of dreams, meditations, religious and spiritual experience, and of course in creative endeavors in the arts and sciences. And symbolic language offers the soul a means by which it can give us guidance and direction towards implementing its purpose. And when we engage in the interpretation of symbolism, we are exercising the higher mind, higher manas, or abstract thought, which serves basically a twofold function. It serves to construct the antakarana, or link between soul and personality, and it also liberates the lower mind from its entanglement with desire, which Indian teachings refer to as karma manas. We must bear in mind as theosophists that our mental body at present is only half formed. It's the purpose of our root race, the fifth, to fully develop this. At the moment, the intellect is very well developed, I would say in some instances overemphasized, whilst when we seek to develop and express higher manas, we struggle. And symbolism represents a great key here. The Indologist Heinrich Zimmer had a long-standing relationship with Jung. He was also the mentor of the great 20th century mythographer, Joseph Campbell. And when commenting upon symbols, Zimmer states, the mind can soar and enter the supernal sphere on the wings of symbols, which represent the truth beyond the pairs of opposites, alluding by those wings a bird net of the basic principle of earthbound human logic, the pedestrian principle of the incompatibility of opposites. For what transcendent means is the transcending, among other things, of the bounding and basic logical laws of the human mind. So supreme truth cannot be adequately expressed in words or comprehended by the conscious mind. The closest we can come to understanding it is invoking the archetypal symbols within our unconscious, thereby exercising our collective, intuitive, Theosophy would call Buddhic mind. So symbols then are the alphabet of Senzar and represent a ferry boat or key capable of unlocking the mysteries of consciousness. And Jung emphasized the symbol-making propensity of the human psyche. Consciousness serves two purposes. One, it enables us to recognize and assimilate the contents of the external world via our five senses. But very importantly, we utilize these images and experiences as a means of translating into visible reality the contents of the world within. Jung's definition of a symbol from Man and His Symbols is probably the best one. Any word or image is symbolic or becomes a symbol when it implies something more than its obvious and immediate meaning. It is a wider unconscious aspect that is never precisely defined or fully explained. As the mind explores the symbol, it is led to ideas beyond the grasp of reason. And as aspirants, we must search within our own unconscious for our own existential symbols. There will be times in our dream life where a symbol very personal to us arises, perhaps a figure from our childhood, a particular incident, and so on. And the challenge is for us to recognize and interpret this symbol and all of them as the language of the soul, and to gain insight into its intent. And in doing this, we exercise the faculties of intuition and abstract thought. Here is an image of my mentor, Douglas Baker. He developed a new form of astrology as a key to the mysteries. His form of esoteric astrology, in many ways, is very different to the others, at least in terms of its methodology, because he relates the glyphs and symbols of astrology to the objects and circumstances in the world. And on this basis, one learns a language by which they may communicate with the soul via astrological symbols found in the astrological chart. That's just as a little aside. So to summarize, I've attempted, very much attempted, to illustrate various ways by which we as monads may tread the path of return and seek to reveal, to apprehend the mystery of consciousness. And as aspects of the one life, as I've said, we reside within a solar system governed by the second ray of love wisdom. So there is an overriding emphasis upon expressing the quality of love and in developing right human relations, which we as a species, to use a Scottish phrase, we're no awfully good at it. And in respect of this most powerful force, Peter Dunoff states, one day love will stand above everything. It will wipe out all defects. It is the only power that sets everything to right. Leave everything to love. It will put everything right. One of the best demonstrations of love in action in our society was by the Scottish president of the TS, John Coates. Writing in the Theosophist magazine, his wife Betson stated that he believed that the key to the door of reality lay in a loving selflessness towards all living things, and only the utmost courtesy in thought, feeling, and action was good enough. And when difference of opinion or disharmony occurred, then love would resolve this factor. So that is pretty much what I've got to say. There's an image of my two books. Please ignore the web link just now. I'm waiting for this damn SSL certificate to arrive to have it active again. So if anyone's interested in a book, please email me and I'll send you the details. So thanks very much.